We're live. It's just me today. Yeah, I got this idea about doing this. First off, it's a completely unscheduled live stream, so if you're watching, the few of you that'll be watching, thank you for watching. Alex is not here today. Alex will be here on Thursday, and I have a couple of conversations lined up this week, so I'm going to try to start doing this podcast more than Alex has an appetite for, but this is the Poor Sports Podcast. And I am Casey McLean. I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to be talking about a couple victories. I'm also, I don't know if you can tell behind me, if you're watching, the podcast studio that I'm trying to build here is in like complete disarray. I'm looking at it on camera. We got problems. I was going to start this live stream at about 1 o'clock, and I've never had something this weird happen with a food delivery service before. I got a message. I ordered from a place in Tacoma that's like one of those like phantom restaurants. So, I don't know what that means. They're like they operate their restaurant inside of another restaurant under a different name for DoorDash purposes, and that's fine. I'm not scared of that. I will say that this is how old I am, is I found out who Mr. Beast was because he was operating like phantom restaurants all over the country, and I had like a Mr. Beast burger thinking it was going to be good, and it was not great. But I ordered from DoorDash, and the person about 40 minutes after I order sends me a message and says, "Send me the location of the restaurant. I can't find it." Which is like, I thought DoorDash had that handled, I'll be honest with you. And I sent them the location of the restaurant, despite me thinking it was a little bit weird. And then about 20 minutes later, I finally get a notification that the food's on the way, and it's a picture of dog food. And this person had gone to Petco for another order, and I ordered human being food, a human being lunch, and received a 40-pound bag of high-end dog food, which I am going to donate it to the the Humane Society, or where I live in Tacoma, we have like a food bank, pet food bank, but it was a pretty wild experience. I tried to call the person. I will say this: I like that DoorDash does this. The person sent me a message in Spanish, and then it translates it to English and tells you that they wrote it in Spanish. So I'm not like, I did try to call the person hoping we could at least figure out some middle ground of communication, that I did not order great outdoors dog food. But anyway, so I ate a couple bowls of dog food, and I'm ready for the show. And then the other one I had, tell me I'm curious, folks that are watching or in the chat or whatever, if you exist today. I know that there's less of you today, no schedule, no Alex. I got into an argument with my wife that I'm risking a lot by talking about it on here. If we had not reached some kind of resolution, I would probably not be talking about it on here. But my wife this year she said, "I'm going to get into the Seahawks. I'm going to watch football." My wife and I have a lot of common interests, but football has been something that she's struggled to get into, would be a nice way of putting it. And I'm going to tell you right now, I'm going to tell you a story where I am an asshole in the story. We were watching the game, and I'm from the Pacific Northwest. I passive-aggressively, we were watching the game. She was not paying attention to my liking. There was a lot of conversation going on. We had my family, my mom, my sister over. And first I go, I paused and I go, "Hey, I know she's playing it cool, but, my wife, she's trying to get into football this year. And so if everyone could just, watch the game, that would be really helpful." She doesn't want to say it. This is sarcasm, by the way. She didn't care. She was having a full conversation with my sister. Literally, they're like planning Christmas dinner in September. And then that's a little dickish. But I'm from the Pacific Northwest. I'm a comedian. I get a little grace on shitty passive-aggressive jokes most of the time. And then towards the end, when Jason Myers kicked the field goal and the Seahawks tied, I paused it so no one could see the score on the screen. And I go, "Hey, without looking, don't look it up. What's the score?" to my sister and my wife. And my wife didn't know. My sister guessed, because she knows football a little bit. She guessed football scores. She was like, she thought it was like trivia. She was treating it like trivia. And then we got into a nice public argument in front of my family, which is nice. Not like knockdown, drag out, but What do you do in the situation where, because my suggestions to my wife, I feel like some of these are pretty innocuous. I was like, I can go watch in another room. That's not acceptable. This is family time. I could go watch in the garage. I could go to a bar. I could go to the Emerald Queen Casino Sportsbook. I could do a lot of things to make this easier on everybody. None of these were acceptable. What do you do? Where do you watch football? How do you deal with people who are disrupting your football viewing experience? All right. I want to know. Send a message or whatever. Send a chat, DM, any form of communication I'm willing to accept. So big weekend of Seattle sports. The Huskies played Eastern Michigan, which was another cupcake game. It's another. I'll talk about it. I'm going to pull up the box score in a little bit. The Huskies and the Seahawks felt like they had pretty similar weekends where it was like you learned something about them. They technically come away with a win. You want them to come away with a win, and they do. So that's good. But I felt like in both games, to a degree, you could only learn bad things about those teams. And I think in both cases, it's possible that we're learning some bad things about the Seahawks and the Huskies. So the Huskies are 2-0, the Seahawks are 1-0, but I don't know that anyone should feel incredibly confident. But the big stories in the early slots for football were that Tyreek Hill got arrested on his way to the Dolphins game. And Tom Brady was about to, and Dak Prescott signed he's now the highest paid player in football history. 4 years, $240 million. And then Tom Brady was going to he was making his broadcasting debut. The Tyreek Hill situation was kind of crazy because I know there's a lot of animosity about the police in this country, and I'm not going to comment on any of that. What I will say is I do feel like if I got a reckless driving in Miami and I was not a professional athlete, I don't think I'm making it to that game. Like, I think that if I'm a spectator of that game, they're not like, oh, this dude has tickets on the 100 level. We got to get him out there. I feel like Tyreek Hill, to a degree, had to have been released because I think, is it reckless driving, which I think is the charge that I heard, and this could have all changed. Reckless driving is like an arrest. Like, not just to put you on the ground and question you. That's like you end up in jail overnight or until someone can make bail. And, but yeah, that'll be interesting to play out. And then if you didn't see it, I actually wish I would have prepared it, but go to Instagram. I think probably like NFL memes or something like that has it. Go check out the touchdown celebration that he and Jalen Waddle did after Tyreek scored a touchdown. It's fucking hilarious. These are like, I'm so glad the NFL has allowed team celebrations. This is like the funniest. It's one of the last several years have been some of the funniest times to be a football fan. And anyway, so I was watching this early slot of games, and I watched two different things happen, which were I saw Kyler Murray slide, and then there was like, I would call it like questionable contact, and a personal foul got called, and then a pass interference call that I would call like questionable. And I know a couple years ago we had pass interference was reviewable because of, by the way, like a season-altering pass interference miss in the previous playoffs. And can we just get to it? I don't understand why we stopped pass interference being reviewable. I know that like reviews are not an exciting period of the football game, but isn't getting the call right the most important thing? Anyways, also I think this is my take. Every personal foul should be reviewable. I think every penalty that's an automatic first down, frankly, should be reviewable because these are like huge swings in win probability a lot of the time. And I don't care if we have to wait an extra 30 seconds, 90 seconds, whatever, to get the call right. Get the call right. Personal fouls, a lot of times you got an injured player on the field if it's some sort of a targeting or some big hit anyway. So there's really not, in that case, like, go get the call right. Okay, I guess what was the other thing? I had one other complaint watching the early games. Did you guys see that guy that said that NFL Red Zone was the most overrated thing that's been invented for? What a fucking asshole. NFL Red Zone is like, frankly, it's like football fentanyl. It's It's the best thing. It's the most potent thing. I miss it. I watch full Seahawks games still. I haven't been completely removed from rooting for and watching my team's entire games, as long as nobody in my house is talking about Christmas dinner louder than the announcers. God damn, I hope my wife doesn't see this. I probably shouldn't actually be talking about it. I don't think it's quite, we resolved it, but I don't know that we're quite at a point where it's comfortable for me to be talking about it on, it's not revealing about her, but she's, it's a raw topic. So don't tell her. If you could please avoid telling her. Yeah, I mean, red zone is, if you're playing fantasy, red zone's like the best thing available to you. I think it's way more fun to watch than trying to hope that you get a good draw on your early game, and that it's teams that you care about and players that you care about. And then that Dak contract is the Dak contract, the two contracts, the Brandon Ayuk contract, the CeeDee Lamb contract, and then the Dak contract right before it got announced, right before, and then also you're you also got to see all the talk about Jamar Chase not being extended, and T. Higgins was inactive, and all that discourse. And it's like, you gotta kind of think it's possible the Seahawks are not that far away from a similar situation happening in Seattle. Geno Smith next year will be he'll have 1 year left on his contract, very similar to Dak Prescott, and DK Metcalf will have 1 year left on his contract, and they could be facing a CD. I mean, by the way, this would be great news. This would mean that Geno Smith played well enough that you're considering extending him, and that DK Metcalf played well enough that you're considering giving him a huge contract. This is good news overall, but it will be a dilemma, and it might be something that you can't keep both guys. You might not be able to keep either guy necessarily, depending on what the cap situation's like. And I will say, as much as I would have loved to see the Pete Carroll regime drafting quarterbacks more often, and I think they definitely could have managed that position better and had a pipeline, the way that they're handling it, where they're if your quarterback costs you $40 million a year, that is significantly less damaging than Dak costing $60 million a year. And Geno doesn't cost $40 million a year. I'm saying if the sum of two quarterbacks, maybe this is just my way of continuing to justify the Falcons taking Michael Penix at, it was number 9 or number 8? Now I'm questioning myself, but yeah, maybe it's maybe it's a little bit of confirmation bias on an opinion I held already. Anyway, is that all that I have to talk about besides, oh my God, no. I do have to talk a little bit about comedy. By the way, this week, starting tomorrow, I'm hosting a show at Tacoma Comedy Club. It'll bounce between the two locations every Tuesday, with I think one Tuesday gap until almost the end of November. I'm going to be hosting a show called The Comedy Voice, which is a competition show, a several week-long competition show at Tacoma Comedy Club, where the winner gets, some thousands of dollars in work, or over $1,000 in work. And I'm hosting it every week, and I'm trying to build a new act. I'm going to be doing a lot of new material. I had confidence in some of my new material, and then I had a show last night where I bombed so fucking hard that I think I gotta write entirely. I gotta ditch all the new material that I thought I had. And so, if you want to come see me struggle with new material, come out and see that, and then eventually it will be good. Some of it will be good. Some of it will no longer see the light of day. But it's also a really cool competition. If you like comedy, if you like local comedy, this is the next group of people these people could be vying to be a comic at my very high level, which is someone who nobody has ever heard of and who is struggling to write a new act. That's the kind of prestige they could carry in their life. Also, Bickerson's Brewhouse, September 21st. We're back, baby. We're back. Speaking of which, Frank, I know Frank is a occasional commenter, friend of the podcast, and he owns Bickerson's Brewhouse with his wife, Sean. And by the way, go check them out at their Ballard location and at their Renton location, even when we're not doing comedy shows there. But September 21st, my pal Todd Royce, I owe you some headshots of these comics that are going to be on the show. But my pal Todd Royce is headlining, so come check that out at Bickerson's Brewhouse in Renton. And then I'm hosting for Giannis Pappas and then I'll be in Wisconsin. If you know anyone in Wisconsin, have them come out. I'm headlining, I think, September 26th, and then I'm looking at barely a calendar. I'm looking at just the date. September 26th, and then I'm opening for Chris Frangiola on September 27th and 28th. Okay. And I will be bombing new material at those shows, by the way, especially the one I'm headlining. I really got to pack those in the middle of those headlining shows. Like, let's pack 10, 15 minutes of just horrible new material in the middle of that show on the 26th. If you, by the way, if you go out there, please let me know that, oh, hell yeah. Bob Springer says you're planning on checking out some of The Voice. That's great. I will say it's like an interesting show. I'm not going to say it's like somewhere between a regular open mic and what like Kill Tony, is. Oh, this is a good question. Any chance you do the Dope Show on the 21st before Giannis? This is the problem. Bob, I think Bob might know this. It's not always going to be true. I don't smoke weed. I'm not against it morally, but I haven't smoked weed since I was 19 years old, and I want to like it again, but I started to get panic attacks when I used to smoke weed, and so I stopped. All right. Yeah, the Giannis. If you're coming out to the Giannis show, Bob, let me know, and we'll see if we can't sneak you on my guest list. Yeah, come check out those Voice shows too. I think I have something else I wanted to promote, another show I wanted to promote, but now I feel like I'm gonna pull up my calendar over here. This is exciting. Live streaming's a little bit different. I've got to commit to that because it doesn't have to be as like fast paced and like segment based and all that shit as like regular radio. And no, I said everything that I have. Yeah, I know. Oh, I know. I want to see you high. I'm curious. So there used to be there were like 3 weed based comedy shows in the Seattle Tacoma podcast or comedy scene. And at one point I was like, I should just auction off the next time I smoke weed to whichever one will pay the most. And I don't think that I have quite that much clout to like, and also I'm friends with a lot of these producers, so I don't want to like be a dickhead and force them to pay me extra or whatever. But I'm wondering if it will even be fun. I might just crumble on stage. I watched a guy that I was friends with. I haven't seen him in many years, but Kevin Addison, a very funny comedian in the Seattle scene, and he headlined a Dope Show. By the way, the Dope Shows, if you guys aren't familiar, and go check them out. The Dope Show at Tacoma Comedy Club and all over the Pacific Northwest. The concept is you get high, you do a set sober, and then you get high, and then you come back and do a set high. I watched him have a panic attack, and he's a guy that like consumes weed on a regular basis, and it was interesting to watch. And as his friend, it was like funny to watch him fail. You're like fellow comedian friend. It's fun to watch them fail. I don't know if it was funny for the audience, and it's nothing against him. He's a super funny comic. I don't know if it's yeah, that would be awesome. There was one of the last times I smoked weed, and I guess I almost said the guy's name. It was this guy that I went to high school with. We were like 1 year out of high school. And we would go to Seattle and walk around Seattle like before. This is, by the way, not for. We still got Seahawks to talk about. This is what I always try to tell Alex. We don't have to be, and you might hate this, folks, but I'm like, we don't have to be like the sports radio where we're like, we give you the topics and you come and fucking listen. No, we can meander a little bit. Plus, Daddy's gone. Daddy's gone today. Like, we can do whatever we want. We have the keys today. So we used to go walk around Seattle when it was when we were under 21, and just go like look at all these drunk people, and we would get a little bit high. And I would. Oh my god, this is a crazy. I don't know who Allison's is. This just says Allison's. Weed gives me diarrhea is a wild. That is a wild message for us. I don't know if weed has any. I didn't know that it has any diuretic effects like that. That's fun to hear. Yeah, so we'd walk around Seattle. I remember I wanted to go to Cowgirls Inc. in Seattle, which was like a Coyote Ugly type bar. And they do comedy. I think they've done some comedy shows there. I've never stepped foot in there because it's like a dance bar, and what I've learned about myself is that I am not that kind of person. I'm not a dancer. But we would, my friend again, almost said his name. We're like out of high school. We go to this, our rite of passage whenever someone would turn 18 is we'd take them to this place called the Lusty Lady, which was like a peep show in Seattle. This is embarrassing. This whole story doesn't make me seems like I was a little bit of a pervert, as one might. I don't know who this said. Dude, you remind me of Seth Rogen. I don't know who Allison's is. I will say, people get very upset when they find out I don't smoke weed because of this Seth Rogen comparison. It's the most common comparison I get. So we would go into the Lusty Lady, bring people in there. In fact, we were loyal enough customers and broad enough customers, and we went to their Christmas party one year, which is like maybe the most embarrassing thing I've ever taken part in. The Lusty Lady is a place where a window comes down and you can watch a lady dancing behind glass, and then men in these booths where these windows would take matters into their own hands and leave a mess. It's a kind of disgusting place, frankly. And in that place, I remember I was like having a panic attack. This is where I realized it was a problem, like a real problem. And I started to crumble emotionally, and I sat down on the ground, not in all the mess, but like close, like outside of the booths. And I was just like struggling, and this guy walks by, and he is both the janitor and security guard, and he's mopping this mess out of he's mopping this mess out from under the I don't know what this means, Bob Springer. That is sad. You were I was on the Christmas list. Yeah. I was anyways. So this dude's mopping the mess out from under the booths, and I go, dude, your job. I was like trying to just get it back together emotionally and make a joke, and I go, dude, your job sucks. And then he pulls out an asp, which is like a police tool or a police weapon, and he flicks it out. One of these, like, it's like a nightstick made of metal. They're like you have to have like a permit, I believe. I think you have to have like a concealed weapons permit to carry one. And he's like, what'd you say, motherfucker? And I was like, oh, dude, I'm sorry. I'm fucking losing my mind. And then we went to IHOP, and I threw up in the bathroom from anxiety, believe it or not from alcohol. That might have been two different stories blended together. But the point is, there was a reason I quit, and it wasn't because I was addicted. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the weekend of sports. Tom Brady had his broadcasting debut, and I will tell you, I had a pretty hard time finding any footage of him doing any broadcasting, and it was like universally panned. People really hated Tom Brady as a broadcaster, and I was like, I can't imagine it being that bad. You know, he's like a pretty engaging guy, pretty funny guy. There's no way it was that bad. And then I finally, right before this live stream, I found the only evidence I've been able to find, which, by the way, if you think there's post the link, and if you think that there's a better example, please let me know, because I was struggling to find examples, and everybody that explained it was like, oh, he just was like bad. It wasn't like there was some monumental event that was bad. He just was bad. And I kind of was doubting them, and then I found this clip, and I think I might have finally been convinced that, and so this is we'll drag her back to the beginning here. I think I might have finally been convinced. Let's listen to this, because so first off, looks the part. This guy looks like he's being cast in a movie to be a broadcaster, and you're like, all right, we know broadcasters don't actually look like that. What a hot dude. We could agree, hot dude.
He's Tom Brady, and I'm Kevin Burkhardt, and you're a broadcaster. How about that?
We're here. It's been quite a journey, but I love being your partner.
Okay, so this is like overly positive. We're not at the bad part yet. I still, by the way, Allison's, I want to know how weed gives you diarrhea.
Excited as well. It's going to be a lot of fun. We should start with quarterbacks. That seems to make a lot of sense. Yeah. Cowboys making news. They come to an agreement with Dak Prescott on a big new contract, right? But with that comes pressure. Not only long-term, but what kind of pressure is he facing then and today in this game?
Yeah, Dak signed the largest contract in the history of the NFL. Now he's got to go out there and earn it. And 2023 was his best season. He's coming off of that. But going forward, it's going to be what happens in the postseason, how he's going to do it. But today, his challenge is going to be Myles Garrett. the right defensive end for Cleveland Browns, the reigning defensive player of the year. He is one of the rare players who has no weaknesses. Dak's going to be dealing with him all day.
Okay, so this is just like, it feels like college broadcasting. It feels like, I was the editor-in-chief of a college newspaper, not to brag. Sorry, ladies, I'm taken. Editor-in-chief of a college newspaper, and I remember I had a guy write I was a big mock draft guy, as some of you that listen to this podcast might know. And a guy that worked for the newspaper wrote a mock draft, and it was literally all 32 picks in the first round. He didn't give grades. He just gave them like a positive review. It was like, here are all the reasons why this is great. And that's what Tom Brady's doing here. There's nothing critical. There's no suspense. There's no like humanity. It's just, here is me trying my hardest not to say something that's offensive to Dak Prescott, not to say something that's offensive to Myles Garrett, not to say something that's critical of anybody in the world. And that's so Bob Springer, the same situation. Also the game, this game was on during the Seahawks game, so we didn't get a chance to watch it in Seattle. If you weren't like switching back and forth, and I'm not interested enough. I will say, like, I'm not interested enough in announcers of football games to take like a special trip over to Fox to watch that game instead of watching the Seahawks for any amount of time. Yeah, it just seems like, it seems like a guy who's very unpolished, a guy who's like kind of doing an impression of what he thinks a broadcaster is. And maybe he will get better. I know like Tony Romo came out strong, but eventually people start hating all announcers. Like I remember when Dave Niehaus died, who's like our big point of reference. We were pretty lucky in Seattle to have Dave Niehaus and Kevin Calabro at the same time. When Dave Niehaus died, I think there were people who were starting to get tired of Dave Niehaus. Dave Sims has faced like a bunch of criticism since replacing Dave Niehaus. I think football announcers locally don't get as much shit because they're only on the radio, because we don't get to watch. I actually wish they would do that. I wish you could have a local broadcast option for these games. I'd love to hear Steve Rabel and watch TV. Like, that would be great, in my opinion. But yeah, I don't really care enough. I'm one of these guys. I'm an annoying person who's like, I don't have a strong opinion on Joe Buck. People hate Joe Buck. I don't mind Joe Buck. I also think the fact that Joe Buck did, what was that show, Brockmire? Did you ever see Brockmire, anyone? The fact that Joe Buck went on Brockmire and made fun of himself on Brockmire makes Joe Buck a fucking hero in my mind. Is Tom Brady good? Is he bad? This was not great. This little, small clip that I just pulled up, I don't think it was good. I'm not going to pretend like it was good. But, I don't know. This dude's probably not going to be an announcer for the whole time. I can't imagine the NFL is going to be thrilled. Is this true? Can someone give me some information on this? I saw a meme, which is where we get all of our information these days, that Tom Brady is not allowed to, as an announcer, be critical of the refs because he's trying to buy part of the Las Vegas Raiders. This could be complete bullshit. I saw it on a meme, like I said. I'm admitting to it. Listen, getting your news from a meme is bad, but admitting to it is better than not admitting to it. So yeah, then the Seahawks played, and the amount of it that I got to see, despite my family speaking over it, there was some encouraging stuff, I think. We got to see, so first off, we got to see the NFL debut of Bo Nix, which I found kind of interesting as a guy. I'm a Washington State, Jesus. I got 4 hours of sleep last night, folks. I was sweating off a bomb, and my kid woke up a couple times. So give me a little bit of grace on the Washington State. I deserve no grace. Anyways, Bo Nix is a guy I've watched in college football for a long time, and I was interested in what he would be in the NFL. He was I think he was probably my like fourth or fifth choice of the rookie quarterbacks that came out this year. I thought he was an interesting fit. Also, like, being asked to throw 42 times in your debut game, that's a lot to ask of a guy. And it's a guy, like, they kept saying about him, he's going to, be able to fulfill an assignment, and that's what Sean Payton needs out of a quarterback. The Broncos were they had their hand forced into picking him to a degree because they didn't have a lot of cap space because the huge dead cap hit for Russell Wilson. They didn't have a lot of draft capital because of the trade that they made for Russell Wilson. And so they were kind of like, Bo Nix was the last of the, I guess, was it 6 quarterbacks? Yeah, because there was 6 first-round quarterbacks, and he was the last one. That's right. It was, yeah, Caleb, Jaden Daniels, Drake May, J.J. McCarthy, J.J. McCarthy went 9, Penix went 8. I think that's right. And then I think Nix went 12th or something like that. And I will say this is probably a little bit of an easy comparison as a Seattle guy and a guy that's like watching a mobile quarterback. He looked to me like Russell Wilson with significantly less arm talent. And I'm having a conversation tomorrow, by the way. Tune in. I have a guest lined up that will be really cool for this kind of stuff. But at the beginning of his career, Russell Wilson like became a professional quarterback, like a professional quality quarterback very quickly. It was very impressive. It's sometimes hard to remember that like that dude was beloved and we all wanted him to cook and all that shit that we kept saying. And now we're like, oh yeah, that guy sucked. We got a lot of revisionist history going on related to Russell Wilson, but Bo Nix kind of reminded me of that. Like some of these savvy moves, like when he'd pump fake in a way that allowed him to scramble for a first down, I thought was like, now as a passer, he looked completely overwhelmed by the Seattle defense. And the defense they got pressure. They didn't get many sacks, 2 sacks on Bo Nix, but it felt like I wouldn't call it like a dominant pass rush, but night and day compared to last year is what it felt like to me. Like they were in the backfield a lot, and they were moving Bo Nix off of his spot a lot, and the secondary played pretty well. I think there was probably an opportunity for, Bo Nix throws 2 interceptions. There was probably an opportunity for 3 or 4 interceptions potentially in that game if the Seahawks secondary doesn't drop some balls. I thought it was interesting to watch Bo Nix play, and you look at that Broncos team, and it feels like they are a million miles away from being a playoff contender. That's not true in the NFL ever. You're always, a good draft and a couple of player development and value signings away from becoming a contender. But yeah, I'm pulling up my pal Bob Springer. Russ was the man. I see what you're saying with Nix. Will be interesting to see how he looks week 10. I agree. Like I said, throwing the ball 42 times in your debut is pretty nuts. So Geno Smith starts the game off, though. Geno Smith has been the subject of a bunch of conversation and controversy among the fan base. He hasn't done anything in particular this offseason to earn any controversy, I would say. But he's kind of always been a guy that the fan base hasn't believed in. And I'll count myself among those people at the beginning. I'm not like a sellout for Geno guy. I would be a little bit frustrated if the Seahawks extended Geno Smith this like early in the season or something like that. I would like to see more. I'd like to see some more options out of what they have at quarterback and the capital they have to spend on quarterback. But Geno Smith comes out, and so he gets sacked on the first play from scrimmage, and then the next play he throws a ball as he's being hit, and it's like an unlucky. I actually don't know if the hit. I watched the replay a couple times. I'm not certain that's not a pick if he's thrown without someone without the low hit against him occurring. But I will say after that the dude is like pretty spotless, not incredible. He's the Geno Smith that we know. He's like a top 20 quarterback that is a game manager, made some throws where you're like, I can see why people think he's great. And the run, by the way, the 34-yard run for a touchdown was like, I think the Seahawks are doing a really innovative thing at the quarterback position, because the thing about Geno Smith is, so he's now been in the league for what, like 10, 12 years, something like that. Let's see. We'll pull up Geno real quick and see. 2013 draft, so he must be in his, I'm not going to pull it up, but he's in his 11th or 12th season. I don't want to do the like silly, no, let's do it. Come on, Casey, don't be lazy. He's in his 11th season. And yeah, this should have been easy I didn't need to fucking do math in public to make that happen. But he's he has not had the wear and tear of a guy who has played 11 years. And so even though he's in his mid-30s, he's still got mobility because he hasn't been hit several times a year for several years. So I think that's an underrated part of his game. I kind of feel the same way about Michael Penix, by the way. Not to bring everything back to Michael Penix, although Michael Penix, I think, is my favorite player in the NFL. So I'm going to talk about Michael Penix a lot. You guys are going to get annoyed with it eventually because he no longer plays for a Seattle team. But I do love him. I love him so much. I also think he's going to be a very good quarterback in the NFL. Seahawks are doing an interesting thing with the quarterback position in that regard because they have this guy with like a lot of tread on the tires because he's been basically, in the garage, if we're going to extend this metaphor as far as it can possibly go. He's been in the garage for the better part of a decade and, obviously has an injury. He misses a game with an injury last year, but like a guy who's been reasonably healthy and who's played reasonably well and still has mobility. And the Seahawks have him at like a deal that I think some people hate, but also the reality is Dak Prescott's contract averages $60 million a year. That is the reality of the NFL. And now I think like if you can put together a quarterback room, I think I might have said this earlier on the podcast. If not, I said it to somebody else in my real life, but if you can put together a quarterback room that costs $40 million, that's real savings. $20 million is real savings. And if you could get that between two quarterbacks, again, if that's Michael Penix and Kirk Cousins, which I think there's a little more, I think it's like $50 million, but, or Geno Smith and Sam Howell, who I think are a little bit less than that. But if you can do that, that might be a new way to handle the quarterback position because we see this position getting hurt on a somewhat regular basis. Now we look at the Packers, who Jordan Love's probably going to be out for a couple weeks, maybe as much as a month, and they're going to have to start Malik Willis, who they just acquired from Tennessee, who has played pretty badly in the opportunities he's been given. You don't want to be that team. You don't want to be a team with a single point of failure. It's great to have a star quarterback. It's bad to have an injured star quarterback because that means you're basically punting the season while paying this quarterback in his prime money. It's not unrealistic to me that there's a chance that it's more valuable to have two quality quarterbacks than to have one guy that's really great. I will say, like, the first half, I'm a big Ryan Grubb believer, and I want to see him succeed. I'd like to see him remain in Seattle in some form forever. I love how innovative he is, and I love what he did with the Washington Huskies. I'm so happy he's the Seahawks offensive coordinator. I can't imagine a scenario where he stays in Seattle permanently because I don't think that Seahawks job is going to open for a long time, and the Huskies job, I think he's probably going to get a head coaching job before that becomes available. Doesn't it kind of feel that way with Jed Fish, by the way? And we'll talk more Huskies in a moment, but like, doesn't it kind of feel like we're just waiting till like, it's like we're in this purgatory period between Kalen DeBoer and whoever the coach after Jed Fish is? It's like it just feels like there's no way if the Jed Fish era lasts over 3 years, it feels like it will have been a mediocre era of football because he chose not to leave. He chose not to advance his career or didn't have opportunities to advance his career because he wasn't successful enough at Washington. Am I the only one that feels that? I might just be a pessimist. I don't know, but it kind of feels that way to me. Like like there's almost no way we're going to see a half decade out of Jed Fish. And then obviously, I mean, we're already facing this stuff where it's like, what are the players going to, what players are going to be there from year to year? Who knows? So like I guess what I would say is I would have liked to see more out of DK Metcalf. I would have liked to see more out of Jackson Smith and Jigba. I had some hope that under Ryan Grubb, both those guys would take huge steps forward, and they still might. And there's still conversation about how like these are two new coaches being brought in and onboarding a bunch of players into their system, and so it's possible that this, like, just in general, the Seahawks are going to continue to get better as the season goes on, and these guys, as they become more comfortable in the offense, will get more. But I will say it was like a letdown. It was a letdown to have DK Metcalf have 4 targets, 3 catches, 29 yards. Jackson Smith-Njigba, 2 catches, 19 yards. Noah Fant, after signing an extension that was like paying him real starter money, like contributing starter money. 2 catches, 11 yards. I know he was a little bit hurt, but it was, yeah. And Geno Smith only throws for 171 yards. Zach Charbonnet catches a 30-yard pass for a touchdown out of the backfield, which is like, seemed like a great play design. I don't know if, what we might see is the Seahawks might not have the offensive line to run like the intricate route combinations that Ryan Grubb was running in Washington, at Washington. And the reason I like Ryan Grubb is because he seems to be, from his college days, adaptive to the personnel that he has. Because he was not always a guy that was like throwing the ball all over the yard. They had a power running game in the early parts of his career. And I'm still, the bloom is not off the rose for me. I was in a group chat where people were like, they should have never hired. It's like literally we're like the second quarter of that game, and people are like, they should have never hired him. What the, like, all fucking angry. And I'm not there. Obviously, I'm not there yet because they looked a lot better in the second half. But let's briefly talk about that Huskies game, by the way, because it's another one of these games that's against an opponent that the Huskies should beat. So if they go out and lose, it's a tragedy. If they go out and win, it's a preseason game, essentially. And again, they don't score in the first quarter. The same concerns that I had after week 1 exist in week 2. 2 weeks of these concerns. And Will Rogers looked good. I would say, looked good. He should look good in that context. I guess let's pull up that box score. We're multimedia today, folks. If you're watching live, if you're not watching live, you're missing out. Or if you're not watching this on YouTube, you're missing out. First off, I've noticed that the audio quality on Twitter/X is dog shit. It just sounds like I'm in a bathroom recording. If you're watching this on X, switch over to YouTube. And it's not just because we have more potential to make money over there, although that helps. It's that it sounds terrible on X. I have a very expensive podcast setup, and it sounds terrible on X. I want that to be a video platform. I want to be able to put stand-up clips on there and not have them deprioritized because they use a bad word. I want to be able to put something up that's controversial but the sound sucks. And I care about that stuff. So yeah, Will Rogers has 4 touchdowns, 261 yards, very similar game to what he had. I mean, he threw more touchdowns this week, but very similar game to the game against Weber State. And Damon Williams comes in and he's also what you would hope for. Jonah Coleman, what you would hope for. Again, I think I don't think you can learn a lot of good about your team. They didn't do anything to assuage the bad that I thought we learned from last week. Is maybe this Washington offense isn't particularly dynamic. The defense looked pretty good. What do you guys think? Who do you think? Here's a maybe a poll question for later. I don't know how to do polls. If I was better at this, we would do a poll, but maybe comment or tweet or whatever, DM. Who's going to become an NFL head coach first? With the understanding that neither of these guys, it's possible neither of these guys ever become head coaches. But is Brennan Carroll or Steve Belichick? Which of these two guys will become a head coach first? They both have the pedigree. Brennan Carroll's, I think, significantly older. How old is Steve Belichick? I might just be giving him a little bit of credit because of his mullet. I'm like, only a young idiot would make that decision. Yeah, that's right. He's 37. I think Brennan Carroll is 45 or something like that. Both guys have Hall of Fame head coach fathers. Which of these guys is going to become a head coach in the NFL first? What's your guess? I think it's going to be Belichick. And I think it goes against everything. I think we're going to swing back towards defensive head coaches if Mike Macdonald has any success. It's possible that Mike Macdonald is directly responsible for a swing back to defensive head coaches. Yeah, I mean, outside of you're not unhappy with anyone. Denzel Boston, 2 touchdowns. You want to see that. Jeremiah Hunter had a great game. Giles Jackson looks like, they have a diverse offense, a diverse attack. Jonah Coleman looks great. I don't really have a lot to complain about. I'm still not convinced. I know Alex and I had a discussion about it last week. I'm still not convinced that Damon Williams is going to play significant. I don't think he's going to take over the starting job this year. Or if he does, it's because Will Rogers played very badly. I don't see the polish. And I do think this is a team that could, you got to win these 2 games. Obviously, it's like you can't not win these games if you're going to be anything. But yeah. Anyway, I do want to say one thing about the Seahawks game. I missed this. I was rewatching it today, and I didn't notice this. Have I mentioned that there were some distractions at my viewing of the Seahawks game? Marshawn Lynch was on the sideline talking to Mike McDonald, and what is this saying? My browser lost connection to the screen. You guys don't care about this, but that's fine. We're not watching any videos. Marshawn Lynch was on the sideline talking to Mike McDonald, and obviously Marshawn is part of Seahawks lore. You'll never separate Marshawn from the Seahawks. Also, by the way, him and Michael Robinson just started a podcast called the Get Got podcast. It's great. If you like those guys, if you liked them on the Real Rob Report, it's great. Mike McDonald looked like when a new young boss takes over and finds out that there's like a second in command that's really fucking annoying. And I don't think Marshawn's annoying, but I do think Marshawn is persistent. And he was like, I think I watched Mike McDonald be like, I can't tell this guy, like, I have a fucking game to coach. Get out of my face. And I don't think that Marshawn is at fault. I think Mike McDonald is a no-nonsense dude, and I think Pete Carroll allowed a lot more nonsense. And it was just funny to watch those, like, 2 guys that seemingly have clashing personalities interact with each other. All right. Did anyone else see that? Did you see that, folks? Bob Springer. All right, and then lastly, I guess we'll talk about these fucking Seattle Mariners of ours. So they drop one of their 3 games. They go on this road trip, and what do? They lose 5. They go 5-5 on a road trip, which at a normal point in the season, a 5-5 road trip would not be the worst thing in the world. I think the fact that they're playing the Angels and Oakland makes it less exciting because Bob Springer did see it. He did see it, folks. What did you think, Bob? Did you think that Mike McDonald looked annoyed? The Mariners season is not over technically. I was trying to explain playoff odds to someone is kind of interesting because it's a little bit like the last election where you're like, so the Mariners have an 8% chance of making the playoffs, which means if you could somehow, in a perfect world, a dream scenario, you could simulate the rest of the season 100 times, they would make it 8 times, that's an amount of times. Like, it's a significant amount of times. Harbaugh and Herbert. I got to see that. I haven't seen the Harbaugh and Herbert situation. Bob Springer said Harbaugh, that's going to be a tough. I'm glad I don't live in San Diego for only that reason, by the way. Otherwise, I would love to live in San Diego. Harbaugh and Herbert was interesting too. Was good too. I'm gonna have to check that out. So if the Mariners played 100 times, if they simulated the season 100 times, the Mariners would make it 8 times. It's not like going to be It's not inconceivable for the Mariners to make the playoffs, but they have done everything they can to fuck themselves out of a playoff spot. And frankly, like going to Oakland and not essentially sweeping that series, that is a bad team who's been hitting the ball well in the second half, but that is a bad team. But especially like they are running out of time. I'm hiccuping. I did see apparently Tom Brady did a mid-game burp. I got to find that because that's pretty relatable. Anyway, so the Mariners 4.5 games out, 8% chance to make the playoffs at this point in the season. It seems like the offense is picking up. It's nice, I will say, of all the things in the world, it is nice that Scott Service left with a 500 record, because it's very easy to calculate what Dan Wilson's record is, knowing that Scott Service left with a 500 record. Because, yeah, the Mariners have had some tough opponents in that time, but they've also had some weak opponents in the time, and it's just been they just can't do it. They can't. There's no killer instinct. Whatever cliches. Bob Springer says the Mariners are so tough right now, especially with football. Yeah, it looked like a millennial trying to drink Truly with their grandpa. Oh, this must be about Harbaugh and Herbert. I'm excited to watch it. Let me see if we can pull it up real quickly. We'll watch it on here, and then we'll call it a podcast. But we have to be able to do it quickly, and we have to be able to do it with sound. So hold on a second. Hold on. Okay, here we go. I think I found. I think this is it. Here we go. Bob Springer. Bobby Springs? Has anyone ever called you Bobby Springs? This isn't exciting for anyone. Here we go. All right. I have no idea what the audio is going to be, by the way. This could be like a copyright violation ready to happen. Do I have audio on? I do. Yeah, that's wild. That's crazy. Let me see. There might be another one. Let me see if there's another one. Hold on a second before we go too nuts on this. Let me see if there's. That's wild. No, is nobody calls you Bobby Springs? Bob Springer says no one calls him Bobby Springs. Man, let's do. I'm gonna pull up this other one. There's a slow motion version of this, I think, or a different angle. Okay. Let's get this back up here, baby.
Out of Harbaugh right before the game, one JH to another.
That is Jim to a T right there. He wants to get in the mix and still run all the drills.
Okay, I think at this point, which is this doesn't even show the whole thing. We got to go back to the other one because the first one was better. I'm gonna pause it when I think there's been enough hits. When he's hit just the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We've got enough hits. This is enough hits. It's done. It's yeah. Yeah, we found the clip. Bob Springer's confirming we have the clip. We're on like 6 hits, and we got half this video left to go. This to me feels like a father and son who the dad coaches the baseball team, and I'll just use baseball because it's a sport that I'm more familiar with. And him and the mom are getting divorced. The mother of of Justin Herbert are getting divorced, and he's trying to overcompensate, and he doesn't know how to use words, so he's just hitting him more and more because he doesn't know how to deal with it emotionally. This is amazing. Jim Harbaugh is awkward. I think he's one of the greatest coaches of all time. Also, this is going to be an amazing relationship to watch these guys awkwardly stumble through. All right, follow me at Casey McLean Comedy. Watch my special, please. I should have put that banner up. No one gives a shit, though. We'll be back, I think, tomorrow. And I don't have anything for Wednesday. I'm taking my oldest daughter, to the fair. Her last day as a non-kindergartner. And then Thursday, Alex and I should be back. So come back for that. But thank you all for watching, listening. I love you, Bob Springer. You're the only fan we really have. The rest of you, fuck off. That's not true. I do like you also. Anyways, please enjoy your night and drive safe. That's what you say at the end of a comedy. I say, have a good night and drive safe.